Hey Rob, what watch are you wearing?
I'm wearing the Garmin Fenix 5X Sapphire smartwatch, and expensive.
What do you think of when you hear the word smartwatch? The Apple Watch probably, maybe a cheaper Apple Watch alternative, the Google Pixel Watch, or maybe you think of a fitness-related watch, something like the Fitbit or Garmin's offerings. Despite what this Porsche worker may want us to believe, smartwatches are not typically associated with luxury. But if you dive a bit deeper into the world of smartwatches, beyond just your typical offerings, you'll find something very strange. See, there are luxury smartwatches, and they are, well, interesting. I think it's worth gaining at least some understanding of the smartwatch as a whole and how it came to be before looking at the idea of luxury smartwatches. I mean, if you don't get the point of the smartwatch, you definitely won't understand why someone would buy a Mont Blanc Summit 3. The origins of the smartwatch go all the way back to the early 70s with digital watches. The first digital watch, made by Hamilton, interestingly enough, was a limited edition luxury piece. It had a gold case and it cost a whopping $2,100, something like $16K today. In the 80s, companies like Seiko would begin to experiment with the idea of connectivity in watches. The Data 2000, an expensive watch in its own right, was capable of storing 2,000 characters, which could be inputted into the watch from an external keyboard dock. Shortly after the release of this watch, Seiko brought out this, the first truly connected smartwatch, the RC1000. It was notable because it could be connected directly to a computer and information could be shared. I think in many ways this was the origin of the idea of the smartwatch. In the 90s, Timex released the Data Link, a watch that could be wirelessly connected to a computer. Other similar ideas were experimented with. At the turn of the century, Samsung and IBM made little phone-watch hybrids that could actually make calls. Actually, Microsoft was really ahead of their time in 2004 with the Spot smartwatch, but these watches never took off like the later smartwatch and specifically Apple Watch would. I think the idea of a tiny computer/phone on your wrist was sort of thrown to the wayside for a while by most companies with, the tiny computer in your pocket, otherwise known as the smartphone. The modern smartwatch really began to take shape in 2010 with the Sony Ericsson Live View. Unlike the experimental wrist computers of earlier decades, the Live View was one of the first watches designed to act as a companion to the smartphone, not as a competitor to it. It featured a small 1.3-inch OLED screen and connected via Bluetooth to Android devices, allowing users to see incoming calls, texts, and notifications on the wrist. It was limited, interactions were clunky, the battery life was short, and apps were pretty scarce, but it did hint at the potential of a wearable device that really extended the smartphone experience without requiring you to pull it out of your pocket. The breakthrough came in 2012 with the Pebble, a project that took off on Kickstarter. It shattered crowdfunding records, raising over $10 million, mainly because it solved many of the issues that early smartwatches faced. Pebble's big innovation was its e-paper display, which gave it exceptional battery life, and this is one of the main features of smartwatches, up to a week of battery life compared to hours or days. It also worked with both iOS and Android. Users could see notifications, control music, use fitness tracking, and even install a growing library of third-party apps developed specifically for the platform. In many ways, Pebble proved that the smartwatch could be more than a gimmick. And then it all went mad when Apple entered the market in 2015 with the Apple Watch. And it really set a new standard. Where Pebble emphasized battery and simplicity, Apple aimed for a more premium, full-featured device. The first generation Apple Watch had a color touchscreen, a digital crown for navigation, haptic feedback, heart rate monitoring, and deep integration with iOS. It also brought fashion into the equation. You could get it in multiple case finishes, sizes, and interchangeable bands. The Apple Watch was positioned as both a tech gadget and kind of a lifestyle accessory. More important though, it's Apple's ongoing investment into the Apple Watch that has made it what it is today. They've really reshaped consumer expectations of what a smartwatch could be. Of course, there are loads of options for those wanting a smartwatch today at quite a few different price points. You've got more fitness-focused watches from the likes of Garmin and Fitbit, and also, kind of adventure watches. There are smartwatches tailored towards businessmen, people who travel a lot, kids. Heck, Atari makes a retro gaming smartwatch. As much as we enthusiasts may not like to admit it, the smartwatch is the modern tool watch. If the quartz watch threatened to kill the mechanical analog watch because of its accuracy, the smartwatch has threatened to kill the traditional watch because of its features. You know, your average college or professional athlete or coach, for example, they wear smartwatches because they offer the tools that they need beyond just constantly being connected. Performance, recovery tracking, workout programming, you name it. Soccer moms, runners, students, there are so many people wearing these who wouldn't have chosen to wear a wristwatch before because it didn't really have any use for them. I also think the real brilliance is, getting the dopamine rush that we get from smartphones that much closer to you by having it on your wrist. But what about the people who like the tech of a smartwatch, but they have too much money and sense to buy a lowly $800 Apple Watch? Interestingly enough, alongside the release of the original Apple Watch was this 24-karat solid gold Apple Watch with an eye-watering price tag of $17,000. One of the most expensive luxury smartwatches ever, though not the most expensive. That one's coming. The solid gold Apple Watch was made in very limited numbers. There was no doubt a good amount of R&D involved in creating this. It probably didn't make them as much money as you might assume, and very few were made. Just a few years after its release, Apple officially declared that support for the 24-karat gold Apple Watch was bye-bye. They are now entirely obsolete. Probably the single worst investment in watch history. I don't know what they're worth anymore. Why did Apple make this kind of luxury version of the Apple Watch? Well, the truth is, Apple was sort of throwing things at the wall with the original Apple Watch. They weren't entirely sure where this market would go, and this shows in that original unveil and in the early years. I mean, over the last decade, Apple Watches have had so many strange features, but in the end, that's what has made it one of their most successful products ever. I think the solid gold version was Apple really covering their bases. Maybe, just maybe, it would be possible for a smartwatch to exist as like a true competitor to the likes of Rolex. Yeah, that never happened. But the Apple Watch and smartwatches in general did prove to be able to exist as fashion accessories alongside being tools. The watches are tools, that is, not the people. Well, also many speculate that the gold Apple Watch was just them appeasing Johnny Ive, who wanted this to exist. Anyways, I want to take a look at some of the more interesting current luxury smartwatches just to give you an idea of what this segment of the market is all about, starting at the lower end with the Montblanc Summit 3. Montblanc is one of the few Swiss watchmakers that has really tried to push this idea of luxury smartwatches. Their Summit 3 is their offering in this space, and this really is all about the looks. It's meant to basically fool you into thinking that it's a classic, traditional analog watch, and that's really what you're paying for here because this watch runs on Google's older operating system. The Pixel Watch 4, for example, is way more advanced and better in every level of specs, and it costs about $350, whereas this is over $1,000. With this watch, you're really paying for the look, and I guess the materials and the brand as well. It is pretty nice looking, but nothing to write home about. Perhaps the most well-known, high-end, sort of luxury smartwatch is Garmin's Marq series. Now, these are very cool. If you're going to drop $2,000, $3,000 on a smartwatch that is really a tool and also is very cool looking, this is probably the way to go. The materials, the design, it's all very appealing and tool-oriented, which I like. In all reality, though, the same criticism for the Montblanc Summit 3 can be leveraged at Garmin. The Marq series technology actually lags behind some of their cheaper, newer offerings. So again, in many ways, you're paying quite a bit more for the look and for the materials. Tissot's T-Touch Connect are some of the more affordable smartwatches available from a luxury Swiss watchmaker, especially now that Frederic Constant is not doing these anymore. At least I don't think they are. I mean, I consider Tissot luxury, right? Affordable luxury, I would say. Anyways, these are roughly $1,100, and they're quite interesting as really a hybrid between traditional watchmaking and smartwatch technology. The operating system, known as SW Alps, was developed specifically for this watch. It was really a collaborative effort between the Swatch Group and research labs such as CSEM and ETA. It combines classic analog hands and tactile sapphire controls with essential smart features, all powered by an embedded solar charging system that lets you run for up to 6 months when connected and over 10 years in purely analog mode. So in that sense, I think it's a pretty revolutionary watch. The real pitch here is the simple way that you can just switch between having this connected smartwatch and just a traditional watch, which is pretty cool in my opinion. But I will say it's gigantic, 47 millimeters. The movement and everything inside must just be too big to have a normal size, because I don't know why they would pick it to be this big, but that is a big watch. In terms of features, the Tag Heuer connected line is very similar to like the Summit 3. You're paying mainly for the name and for the materials and look. I think these must be pretty successful though for Tag Heuer. Tag sits in a strange place in the luxury Swiss market, and it doesn't surprise me that these would sell well with their customers. For example, the F1 Red Bull connected watch. Like that makes sense. I could see people liking that, and it does look pretty cool. Now, the most ridiculous and most expensive smartwatch ever actually came from this line, the Modular 45 Diamond, which was just a standard connected watch. I mean, there's nothing really special about it in terms of the internals, but it was absolutely covered in diamonds, which is just silly. And also, it costs just shy of $200,000. I'm not sure if they sold any of these or one of them or a bunch of them. I don't know who would buy this thing. If you bought this, let us know in the comments how it's going for you. Louis Vuitton makes a smartwatch called the Tambour Horizon Light Up, and it starts at around $3,500. This is basically a smartwatch that is much more about the show than the tech. It's big, 44 millimeters. It's got curved sapphire glass, and its standout feature is a ring of 24 glowing Louis Vuitton logos that light up when you get notifications. Instead of Google's Wear OS, it runs on Louis Vuitton's own software, which gives you things like step tracking, calendar, weather, and also some specific Louis Vuitton travel guide city map things, but it doesn't have, in-depth fitness tracking or anything like that, the way that Apple Watches and Garmin's do. It does work with iPhones, but really the point here is for it to be flashy, and that's what it is. It's an accessory for Louis Vuitton fans. An expensive one. Now, there are more luxury smartwatches. H. Moser & C's Streamliner Alpine Driver's Watch is very expensive, and it comes with a smartwatch, which is pretty strange. But as I look at most of these offerings, I can't help but still think of that original 24-karat gold Apple Watch. I think the story of the gold Apple Watch and what happened with it really gets at the ongoing problem with all of these luxury smartwatches. Similar to the problem with buying a luxury electric car, or really any modern luxury car today, and that is that passing it on to the next generation likely won't be possible. And that is supposed to be at least part of the luxury goods formula. At least that's the part that I like about it. This idea of high quality, long-lasting stuff. But since smartwatches sit more in the tech world than the traditional wristwatch world, they don't make much sense as luxury items. They're not good investments, which is a big part of the luxury watch industry, though it's mostly imagined. And this is because smartwatches are inherently meant to become obsolete. Here's what one Reddit user had to say in response to a post where someone was saying they were going to get their first, quality watch and that they thought they wanted it to be a luxury smartwatch. This person responded, "Though it may work fine as a luxury accessory, it is likely to be quite a bad investment for a collection. As though the externals are likely to keep up with time, the internals will fairly quickly seem antiquated as the smartwatches have not stabilized. So unless some manufacturer ensures some upgrade program where the internals can be replaced, it could be completely uninteresting in, say, 10 years. At the very least, there should be an insurance of new batteries for some lengthy time period. It might even be problematic to find a phone it can connect to a decade away, unless you keep an old phone too. The truth is, the worst kind of luxury item that you can buy is a tech-based one. Luxury phones, luxury headphones, luxury TVs, luxury EVs. The companies who make these rarely understand what luxury is really about. Just because you throw some diamonds on a USB stick doesn't make it luxury. And just because you can encase a smartwatch in gold doesn't make it luxury either. And if what you're paying significantly more for is the tech, well, in the tech world, you just wait a year or so and that tech will become affordable. But it doesn't seem to be about the tech in this space. At the end of the day, luxury smartwatches are interesting mostly because they don't really make much sense. They're really caught between two worlds, trying to borrow the aura of timeless mechanical watchmaking while still being shackled to the short lifespan of consumer tech. A Rolex from the 70s can easily still be ticking today, but a $200,000 diamond-encrusted Tag Heuer connected or a $17,000 gold Apple Watch, it's already basically a paperweight. That doesn't mean they aren't interesting or even fun, but they reveal a truth that most luxury brands don't want to admit. Real luxury shouldn't just be about materials or logos, it should be about longevity. And until smartwatches can solve the problem of built-in obsolescence, they will just simply remain expensive gadgets, kind of pretending to be heirlooms. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments below. What do you think makes a luxury watch, and could a smartwatch exist in the luxury space in a meaningful way? Alright guys, we'll see you in the next one.